Welcome back to the deep dive. Usually when we grab a stack of documents for these sessions, it's a white paper or a book, maybe a news report. Today I'm holding something that honestly, it looks terrifyingly boring at first glance.
Yep. What is it?
It's a list. Specifically, a list of 200 interview questions and answers for EHS professionals.
It does sound dry when you pitch it like that. A study guide for your final exam.
Exactly. I thought we were going to be reading about, I don't know, where to put the fire extinguisher. But then I started reading it, and about 10 questions in, I realized this isn't a quiz. It's an operating system. It's a massive, complex blueprint for how modern civilization stops itself from, blowing up or poisoning the water.
That is the perfect way to frame it. EHS, environmental health and safety, it really is the invisible shield.
The invisible shield. I like that.
We walk through it every day. When you walk into an office and you don't trip over a cable or you can breathe the air near a factory and you don't cough, well, that's EHS at work. This document is kind of the code that makes all that possible.
And it's surprisingly philosophical. I mean, it's equal parts engineering, psychology, and law. So let's peel this back. We have this massive discipline. How does the material actually define the mission here?
Well, if you boil it right down, the foundational definition is that EHS is the discipline of identifying, assessing, and controlling hazards.
Okay.
But the scope is what really matters. It's sort of split in two. On one hand, you've got the protection of human health, keeping the worker alive.
Right.
And on the other, you have the protection of the environment, keeping the planet alive.
It's the ultimate don't break the toys and don't hurt your friends rule, but, for heavy industry.
Precisely. And the hook for me, looking at this whole picture, is that safety isn't just about hard hats. It's about systems. It's realizing that a chemical spill and a repetitive strain injury from typing are actually failures of the exact same system.
Let's start with the E part then, environment. This section was a real wake-up call for me because, I consider myself pretty green, I recycle, I try to avoid plastic, but this document basically told me my version of green is kindergarten level.
Well, it's the difference between, say, consumer environmentalism and industrial environmental management.
Okay.
In a corporate setting, the scope includes pollution prevention, waste management, compliance with some very, very strict laws, and resource conservation.
The concept that really just shattered my worldview here was the hierarchy of waste management.
Oh, yeah.
I think the average person, myself included, assumes that recycling is the gold standard. We see the little triangle arrows, we feel good about ourselves. But in this hierarchy, recycling it's not the hero, is it?
No, it's not. In fact, if you're recycling, you've already failed at the top 3 levels of the hierarchy.
That is just wild. Okay, walk us through the ranking. What's the actual gold standard?
The top priority is prevention. Just don't create the waste in the first place. If you can design a process that has 0 byproduct, that is the win.
And right below that?
The next level down is minimization, so just make less waste. And the third is reuse, using the same material again without having to reprocess it.
And then comes recycling.
And then comes recycling. It's plan D, because recycling, it requires energy. You have to transport it, melt it down, process it. It's better than the alternatives, sure, but it's not clean.
And what are the alternatives below that? Just setting it on fire?
Basically, yeah. You have energy recovery, so incineration to generate power. And then the absolute last resort, the total failure state, is disposal, landfill.
Wow.
The whole goal of an EHS professional is to push everything up that ladder, away from the landfill.
This connects directly to a term that gets thrown around a lot these days.
Yeah.
The circular economy. Before this, I thought it just meant we recycle everything. But based on that hierarchy, it's way more radical than that.
Oh, it's a complete shift in how we think about capitalism.
Yeah.
The traditional economy is linear. Take resources, make a thing, use the thing, throw it away.
Right.
The circular economy tries to close that loop. It's all about keeping resources in use for as long as possible.
So it changes the business model. Instead of selling me a light bulb that burns out so I have to buy another one,
Right.
a circular model might mean the company sells me lighting as a service, they own the bulb. When it breaks, they take it back and fix it. They're incentivized to make it last forever.
Exactly. And to get there, you need data. You can't just guess. That's where the life cycle assessment, or LCA, comes in.
This is the cradle-to-grave concept, right?
So cradle to cradle, if you want to be optimistic. And LCA forces a company to own the entire history of their product. You don't just measure the pollution from your factory.
Yeah.
You have to measure the impact of mining the raw metals in another country, the shipping, the consumer using electricity to run it, and finally, what happens when it hits the dump.
It's accountability on a massive scale. It stops companies from just outsourcing their pollution to their supply chain.
Exactly. It defines sustainability not as a vibe, but as a math problem. The definition provided is meeting present needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet theirs.
So if your LCA shows you're using up a resource that won't replenish, you are, by definition, mathematically unsustainable.
You got it.
There was one other principle in the environmental section that felt almost philosophical. The precautionary principle.
I love this one. It completely flips the usual legal standard on its head.
How so?
Usually in law, you're innocent until proven guilty, right? But the precautionary principle says that if an activity might cause harm to the public or the environment, we don't wait for absolute scientific proof before we act to stop it.
So if we think this new chemical might turn the frogs purple, we stop using it now. We don't wait 10 years until all the frogs are actually purple to say, oops.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's better safe than sorry,
Okay.
but codified into global regulatory strategy.
Okay, so that's the planet. Now let's zoom into the factory floor. The health and safety components. This is where the rubber meets the road.
Or where the boot meets the slippery floor, yeah. The core mechanics of survival.
And right away, we have to clear up some vocabulary, because I use the words hazard and risk completely interchangeably. If I see a wobbly ladder, I say, that's a risk or that's a hazard, but they're not the same, are they?
Not at all. They are two very distinct variables in the safety equation. A hazard is the potential source of harm.
Okay.
The shark in the tank,
Yeah.
the electricity in the wire, the chemical in the bottle. It's the thing itself.
And risk.
Risk is the likelihood of that harm actually happening, combined with how severe the consequence would be. So, back to the shark. The shark is the hazard. If you're standing behind thick glass looking at the shark, the hazard is high, but the risk is, negligible.
But if I jump into the tank,
The hazard hasn't changed. It's still just a shark. But your risk has gone through the roof because the likelihood of interaction just hit 100%.
so the EHS manager's job isn't to remove all hazards, because you need electricity to do work. It's to manage the risk.
Correct. And that leads us to probably the single most important concept in this entire document. If you only remember one thing, it should be this: the hierarchy of controls.
I noticed a parallel here. Just like we had a hierarchy for waste, we have one for stopping people from getting hurt. And again, my intuition was completely backwards. I assumed the best way to stay safe was to wear a helmet.
That is the most common misconception. We're all trained to think safety equals PPE.
Personal protective equipment.
Hard hats, goggles, gloves, yeah. But the hierarchy of controls, PPE is at the bottom of the barrel. It is the least effective way to protect someone.
Unpack that for me. If I'm wearing a suit of armor, why am I not safe?
Because the hazard is still there. The shark is still in the room with you. PPE relies on the worker to wear it perfectly, every single time. It relies on the equipment never tearing or breaking. If the PPE fails, the injury happens instantly.
Okay, so what's at the top? What's the best thing to do?
Elimination. Get the shark out of the room. Physically remove the hazard. If you use a toxic chemical to clean parts and you switch to a process that uses high-pressure water instead, you've eliminated the chemical hazard. The risk drops to zero. You don't need gloves anymore.
That makes perfect sense. It's better to cage the tiger than to give the zookeeper a stick.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And below elimination, you have substitutions. So swap the tiger for a house cat. Replace the dangerous thing with a safer thing.
Okay.
Then you get to engineering controls. Build a better cage. Isolate the person from the hazard. Think machine gains or ventilation systems.
And then administrative controls.
That's changing how people work. Warning signs, training, rotating shifts so people aren't exposed for too long. And then finally, if you can't do any of those things, you hand them the PPE.
Wow.
PPE is basically an admission that we couldn't design a truly safe system, so we're just going to armor up the human and hope for the best.
It's fascinating that the most visible symbol of safety, the hard hat, is actually a sign that the hazard is still right there.
It's the last line of defense. It should never be the first.
Let's talk about some of those specific ways the world tries to hurt us. The document lists the usual suspects, fire, explosions, but it also spends a lot of time on the slow killers, specifically ergonomics.
Ergonomics is huge. It's the science of designing the work to fit the worker, not the other way around.
And it's not just about comfy chairs?
Not at all. It's about biomechanics. If a worker has to twist their spine every 30 seconds to grab a part off a conveyor belt, they will get injured. It might take 5 years, but it's inevitable.
So bad design is a hazard, just like a toxic chemical is.
Absolutely. It just moves a lot slower.
Yeah. Then there are the fast hazards. The one that sounded the most like an action movie scenario was lockout to gout.
A lodo. This is one of those procedures that is, unfortunately, written in blood. It is one of the most critical things in all of industry.
So the scenario is I'm inside a giant machine fixing it, like a big crusher or a mixer.
Right. You're inside. Now imagine someone walks by the control panel, sees the machine is off, thinks, that should be running, and hits the on button.
That is a nightmare scenario.
That is exactly why lockout to gout exists. You don't just turn it off. You put a physical padlock on the power switch. And the key, you put the key in your pocket.
So you're the only one who can turn it back on.
You're the only person who can unlock it. It's a physical guarantee that you control your own safety. No one can start that machine unless they physically cut your lock off, which is a massive, massive violation.
There were other specific environments mentioned too, like confined spaces.
Storage tanks, sewers, silos, these are so deceptive. You look in, it just looks like an empty room, but the atmosphere inside might be displacing oxygen.
Oh.
You jump in, you take one breath, and you pass out. And then, and this is the real tragedy, a buddy sees you fall, jumps in to save you, and they pass out too.
God, so the procedure must be incredibly strict.
Incredibly. You need permits, you need constant atmospheric testing, and you often need a retrieval system like a harness so you can be pulled out without someone else having to go in.
All of this, the locks, the permits, the harnesses, it all relies on one variable we haven't really touched on yet, the human brain. You can build the safest system in the world, and a person will find a way to bypass it because it's faster.
The human element. And this brings us to what we call safety culture.
Which, I've got to be honest, sounds like corporate buzzword soup. We have a great culture. What does that actually mean in a safety context?
It's defined as what people do when no one is watching.
Okay.
If a worker sees a spill and just walks past it because that's the janitor's job, you have bad safety culture. If they stop and clean it up because they think someone might slip, that's a good culture.
And the document also brought up psychosocial hazards. I feel like 10 years ago, you would not find that in an engineering manual.
You absolutely would not. But today, we recognize that things like stress, harassment, bullying, and burnout are legitimate workplace hazards.
So a toxic boss is literally a workplace hazard.
Legally, yes. If the way work is organized causes severe anxiety or depression, that is a recordable injury. The brain is an organ. Damaging it through stress is no different than damaging a lung through chemical fumes.
That is a massive evolution in how we think about work. Okay, so we have the hazards, we have the people. How do we manage this whole beast? We need a system. The document talks about the PDCA cycle.
Plan, do, check, act. It's the heartbeat of continuous improvement.
Give me a real-world example of this loop.
Okay, plan. You notice people are slipping in the lobby when it rains. You plan to install new floor mats? Do. You buy the mats and put them down?
Simple enough.
Check. You look at the data 3 months later. Did the number of slips go down? And then act. If yes, you make it a permanent policy to replace those mats every year. If no, you go back to the planning stage. You look for a new solution. You never stop looping.
And to do that check part, you need numbers. This brought up a really interesting distinction between lagging indicators and leading indicators.
This is the difference between driving by, looking out the rearview mirror versus looking through the windshield.
Okay, unpack that.
A lagging indicator measures failure. How many people got hurt last month? It's easy to measure. You just count the bandages. But it's always looking backwards. The damage is already done.
And a leading indicator
that tries to predict the future. It's proactive. How many safety inspections did we complete? How many people attended the training? How many near misses were reported?
Right.
If your leading indicators are high, if you're doing the proactive work, your lagging indicators, the injuries, will almost certainly be low.
But companies love to focus on the lagging ones, don't they? They'll put up a sign. We had 0 accidents this month.
Because it's a vanity metric.
Yeah.
But having 0 accidents doesn't mean you're safe. It might just mean you were lucky. Your leading indicators tell you if you're actually being safe.
You mentioned near misses. The document calls this a free lesson.
I love that framing.
Yeah.
A hammer falls off a scaffold and lands 2 inches from your foot. Nobody's hurt. Most people will just say, phew, that was a close one, and forget about it.
Yeah.
DHS says, wait, stop everything. Why did the hammer fall?
Because next time, it doesn't land 2 inches away. It hits someone on the head.
Exactly. A near miss is a complete system failure where you didn't have to pay the price in blood. If you ignore it, you're just throwing away free data.
But when something does hit the head, when things go wrong, we have to turn into detectives, root cause analysis.
CSI, Workplace Edition.
And the text suggests we usually stop too soon. We blame the immediate cause.
Right. Bob slipped. The immediate cause was the wet floor. So we blame Bob for not looking where he was going. Case closed. That's terrible analysis.
Good. How do we go deeper?
We use a technique called the 5 whys. You literally just act like a toddler. Bob slipped? Why? The floor was wet. Why? A machine was leaking oil. Why? The gasket on it broke. Why? It wasn't replaced during the last maintenance. Why?
Because we don't have a preventative maintenance schedule for that machine.
Uh-huh.
So Bob isn't clumsy. The management system failed to schedule the maintenance.
Exactly. You went from blaming the victim to fixing the system. If you had just fired Bob, the next guy would have slipped on the exact same oil leak.
It's amazing how this whole document, all 200 of these questions, it just keeps coming back to that same theme. It's never just one thing. It's a web.
It is. There's a word that pops up in here, integration. Safety isn't a side hustle. You don't do business and then do safety afterwards.
Yeah.
You have to bake safety into the business decision itself.
So if you're designing a product, safety is part of the design. If you're hiring people, safety is in the job description.
It has to be holistic. And that leads to the final takeaway for me, really. The concept of due diligence.
What does that mean in this context?
It means you have taken every reasonable precaution to protect people. But the key is that it's never finished. You can't just tick a box and say, okay, we're safe now.
The world changes.
The world changes. New chemicals, new machines, new viruses. Due diligence means you are in a constant state of vigilance. You're always looking for the next hazard.
It's a heavy responsibility, but also kind of hopeful. It means we actually have the tools to protect each other if we're just willing to use them.
We do. The invisible shield works, as long as we keep holding it up.
Well, I'm certainly going to look at that fire exit sign a little differently on my way out today. Thank you for walking us through this blueprint for survival.
My pleasure. Stay safe.
And thank you to everyone listening. We'll see you on the next Deep Dive.